What if being alone was not something to endure, but something to embrace? Imagine a quiet evening. The sun sets in soft amber hues. The world slows, and for the first time in a long time, you are truly with yourself. No expectations, no obligations, just the stillness of the present moment. Society often tells us that solitude in old age is a misfortune, a sign of isolation or decline. But is that the truth, or just a fear we've been taught to believe? The Stoics saw solitude not as emptiness, but as an opportunity, an unshackling from the distractions that once consumed us. For much of life, we chase validation, attach our happiness to relationships, and fear the silence of being alone. But wisdom teaches us this: contentment is not found in the number of people we surround ourselves with, but in the strength of our own mind. Old age is not a time of social depletion, but of refinement. It is the season where we learn to distinguish between companionship and dependency, between genuine connection and mere habit. True friendship at this stage is no longer about quantity. It is about depth, whether with others or within ourselves. So, is solitude a loss or a liberation? That depends on how we choose to see it. Stay with me as we explore why growing older is not an end, but a return to clarity, to peace, to the deepest essence of who we truly are. 1. Understanding the shift in priorities. As the years pass, our priorities inevitably shift. What once felt urgent, the need for companionship, social validation, constant engagement, begins to lose its grip. In youth, friendships shape our identity, offering a sense of belonging, a reflection of who we think we are. We collect relationships like trophies, believing that the more we have, the more complete we become. But with time comes a deeper realization. True fulfillment is not found in the presence of many, but in the ability to be at peace with oneself. As we age, the urgency to be seen, to reach out, to fill every silence with conversation fades. In its place, a quiet contentment emerges. We no longer feel the need to prove ourselves, to maintain appearances, or to seek validation through the company of others. Instead, we embrace solitude, not as a void, but as a sanctuary. The crisp morning air, the slow unfolding of a flower, the familiar weight of a well-worn book, these become the simple joys that nourish us. This is not loneliness. This is liberation. The Stoics remind us that suffering often stems from our attachments, our clinging to things that are by nature fleeting. Relationships, like all else, change, evolve, and sometimes fade. But when we stop grasping at connections simply for the sake of having them, we free ourselves to experience them more authentically. Without expectation, without dependency, we engage not out of obligation, but out of genuine affection and mutual respect. This shift in priorities does not mean we stop caring for others. It means we choose more wisely. We become selective, not out of selfishness, but out of wisdom. Energy is finite, and rather than scattering it across superficial engagements, we invest it where it truly matters. Some may mistake this for isolation, but in reality, it is a deepening of self-awareness, of understanding, of presence. To be alone is not to be empty. It is to be full of clarity, of purpose, of the richness of our own company. And in this state, we discover something profound. We no longer need the world to validate us. We are already whole. 2. The freedom of self-reliance. One of life's greatest lessons is learning to stand on our own. For much of our lives, we are shaped by the expectations of others, seeking approval, maintaining friendships out of obligation, conforming to social norms. We measure our worth by how we are perceived, by the relationships we keep, by the roles we play. But with age comes a realization. We no longer need to chase validation from the outside world. Instead, we turn inward and discover something far more valuable: our own self-sufficiency. At first, this shift may feel unsettling. We have spent decades surrounded by people, navigating conversations, building relationships, and filling our days with social obligations. To step back from this intentionally can feel unnatural, even lonely. But then a quiet truth begins to settle in. Self-reliance is not isolation. It is freedom. The freedom to engage with others when we choose, rather than out of expectation. The freedom to prioritize inner peace over external approval. The freedom to simply be without needing constant affirmation. Think about the moments in life when you have felt most at ease. Was it in a crowded room, proving your worth through words and gestures? Or was it in the stillness of a quiet morning, the sun rising slowly as you sipped your coffee with nothing pulling at your attention? Was it in the simple pleasure of watching the waves roll in, feeling no need to be anywhere else? Those moments of solitude were not empty. They were full of peace, full of clarity, full of a presence that required nothing from you. That presence is self-reliance. In youth, we seek fulfillment outside ourselves, through recognition, through relationships, through the sense of belonging they bring. But as the years pass, we begin to see that fulfillment was never something to be found. It was already within us, waiting to be realized. There is a deep, abiding satisfaction in knowing that we are enough, just as we are. That we do not need the world to affirm our existence for us to feel whole. The beauty of self-reliance is that it allows us to engage with others in a more authentic way. No longer do we seek companionship out of necessity. We seek it because we genuinely enjoy it. There is no desperation, no fear of being alone, no obligation to maintain connections that no longer serve us. We give freely, without expectation, because we are already full. This shift in perspective is transformative. We stop fearing solitude and begin embracing it. We stop seeing ourselves as alone and start recognizing ourselves as independent. And in that independence, we find strength. We find peace. We find a life no longer dictated by external pressures, but guided by the quiet, unwavering voice within us, the voice that has always known exactly what we need. Self-reliance in later years is not about rejection, it is about liberation. It is the realization that everything we once sought, love, peace, understanding, was never outside of us. It was within us all along. 3. Quality over quantity, the art of meaningful connection. Friendships ebb and flow. Some remain for a lifetime, others fade into distant memories. But rather than mourning these changes, we should honor them for what they were, meaningful chapters in our journey. As we grow older, we begin to understand a fundamental truth. It is not the number of people in our lives that matters, but the depth of the connections we share. A single profound conversation holds more value than years of surface-level interactions. In youth, we often equate companionship with abundance. More friends, more gatherings, more voices filling the silence. But with time, we recognize that fulfillment is not found in collecting relationships, but in cultivating them. True connection is not about frequency or extravagance. It is about authenticity. It is about being truly seen, understood, and accepted by another. Imagine sitting across from an old friend, sharing a simple meal. There's no need for grand gestures, no pressure to impress, only the quiet comfort of presence. In that moment, you realize that connection is not about the quantity of time spent together, but the quality of attention given. Contrast this with a room full of acquaintances where conversations skim the surface, never reaching the core of who we are. Aging grants us the wisdom to choose our interactions with intention. We no longer feel obligated to entertain every invitation or maintain relationships that no longer bring us joy. This is not selfishness, it is discernment. And in practicing this discernment, we free ourselves to invest in the connections that truly enrich our lives. This shift in perspective also allows us to redefine companionship. We begin to see connection in the simplest of moments. A smile exchanged with a stranger, the silent understanding between longtime friends, the quiet solace found in nature. Connection is everywhere if we are present enough to recognize it. More importantly, by valuing depth over breadth, we learn the art of true presence. When we listen without the need to respond, when we give our full attention without distraction, we transform even the briefest encounters into something meaningful. Relationships, like everything else in life, are fleeting. But the sincerity of our presence, the depth of our interactions, and the kindness we extend, these are what endure. In the end, it is not how many hands we have shaken, but how many hearts we have truly touched. 4. The beauty of solitude and reflection. Solitude is not emptiness, it is a sanctuary. It is the space where we step away from the noise of the world, not to escape it, but to understand it more deeply. In youth, we often fill every moment with conversation, seeking validation in the presence of others. But with age comes a realization. Silence is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. In stillness, we find clarity. In solitude, we find ourselves. When we sit alone with our thoughts, we finally have time to process our journey, to reflect on our choices, to make peace with our past, and to let go of regrets. Too often people mistake solitude for loneliness, but loneliness is the absence of connection, while solitude is the presence of the self. It is the rare opportunity to listen, not to the distractions of the outside world, but to the quiet voice within. Throughout history, great minds have turned to solitude to seek wisdom. Philosophers, poets, and thinkers have all understood that stepping back from the world allows us to see it more clearly. In moments of stillness, we gain perspective. We recognize what truly matters. We free ourselves from the illusion that our worth depends on constant engagement. Moreover, solitude nurtures creativity and introspection. When we are alone, we can engage in pursuits that bring us joy, writing, painting, gardening, or simply sitting in quiet contemplation. These moments remind us that fulfillment does not come from the presence of others, but from the richness of our own inner world. Of course, embracing solitude does not mean shutting out the world entirely. It is about balance, knowing when to seek connection and when to retreat into oneself. It is about allowing stillness to become a practice, not as an escape, but as a path to self-awareness. In the end, solitude is not a burden, but a gift. It is a doorway to inner peace, a space for self-discovery. And when we learn to sit comfortably with ourselves, we realize that we are never truly alone. We are always in the presence of our own soul. 5. The importance of family and community. As friendships naturally shift with time, the significance of family and community often grows stronger. This is not about dependence, but about embracing a new role, that of a mentor, a guide, a keeper of wisdom. With age comes the unique opportunity to pass down hard-earned lessons, to offer perspective, and to leave behind something greater than ourselves. Family, whether by blood or by choice, provides a foundation of deep-rooted bonds. A conversation with a grandchild, sharing a story of perseverance, or guiding them through life's uncertainties. These are invaluable gifts. They remind us that our experiences are not just our own, but part of a greater continuity, a ripple that extends far beyond our years. Community, too, plays a vital role in sustaining a sense of belonging. Whether it's a familiar face at the market, a kind neighbor, or a gathering of like-minded individuals, these connections offer warmth and purpose. Unlike friendships of youth, often built on shared ambitions or activities, connections in later years are defined by their authenticity and depth. They are not about seeking approval, but about offering presence. More importantly, giving, whether through wisdom, time, or simply lending an ear, becomes a source of fulfillment. When we give without expectation, we dissolve the ego and foster a sense of peace. Teaching a skill to the younger generation, offering encouragement to a friend, or extending kindness to a stranger, these simple acts remind us of our shared humanity. Perhaps the most profound realization is that true connection is not about quantity or obligation, but about presence. In the end, family and community are not just relationships, they are the legacy we leave behind. Through the wisdom we share, the love we extend, and the moments we cherish, we contribute to something that endures long after we are gone. 6. Letting go of social expectations. The world may tell you that you need more friends, that solitude is something to fear. But is that truth, or just another expectation imposed upon us? Old age is not a time to conform to societal pressures. It is an opportunity to step away from the noise and live on your own terms. For much of life, we are shaped by external demands. What we should achieve, how we should behave, who we should surround ourselves with. We chase recognition, believing that validation lies in numbers. But at some point, the realization dawns, none of it truly defines us. Letting go of social expectations means embracing the freedom to live authentically. There is no obligation to maintain friendships that drain you, no rule that dictates what your social life should look like. True peace is not found in appeasing others, but in honoring yourself. This shift is not about withdrawing from the world, but engaging with it on your own terms. It means choosing meaningful solitude over forced interactions, setting boundaries, prioritizing depth over quantity, letting go of the guilt that comes with saying no to outdated norms that no longer serve you. When we tie our self-worth to how socially active we are, we place our happiness in external hands. But when we release these expectations, we open the door to a new kind of contentment, one rooted in presence, self-acceptance, and inner stillness. In the end, the only true measure of a life well lived is not the number of people around you, nor the invitations you accept, but the peace that comes from living in alignment with your deepest truth. Letting go is not loneliness, it is liberation. And in that freedom we find our most authentic selves. 7. Practical considerations. Redefining connection. Aging brings changes. Our energy shifts, our pace slows. But these are not limitations. They are invitations to redefine how we experience connection. We often think of connection as something grand, social gatherings, celebrations, long conversations. But in reality, It exists in the smallest moments. A warm smile exchanged with a stranger, the laughter of a child drifting through the air, the quiet comfort of a handwritten letter. These fleeting gestures often carry more meaning than an evening of forced conversation. Modern technology also offers ways to stay connected without exhausting ourselves. A video call with a loved one, a heartfelt message, or even a shared silence over the phone. These simple acts remind us that we are never truly alone. Instead of overwhelming ourselves with social obligations, we can choose interactions that are nourishing, reciprocal, and aligned with our well-being. If life demands that we slow down, we do not resist it. We move with it. If our ability to travel diminishes, we find fulfillment in the present moment, in the space we already inhabit. True connection does not require movement. It requires presence. Rather than longing for what was, we can ask, how can I experience connection in a way that aligns with my current reality? Perhaps it is deepening the relationships we already have, rather than seeking new ones. Perhaps it is fostering a connection with nature, feeling the rhythm of life in the rustling leaves and shifting winds. When we redefine what connection means to us, we release the pressure to conform to outdated expectations. We embrace the quiet, the simplicity, the depth of a life well lived. And in doing so, we realize that connection is not about how many people surround us, but about how deeply we engage with the life before us. 8. A legacy of wisdom. The greatest legacy we leave behind is not wealth or status. It is wisdom. It is the lessons we impart, the understanding we cultivate, and the example we set. Old age is not about accumulating more, but distilling life down to its essence. Through storytelling, we pass down experiences, offering guidance shaped by a lifetime of trials and triumphs. Through acts of kindness, we teach the true nature of compassion. By embodying peace, we remind others that fulfillment is not found in material gain, but in the clarity of a mind unburdened. Even in solitude, our impact extends beyond us. Each insight we share, each word of encouragement we offer, becomes part of something greater, a ripple that continues long after we are gone. True legacy is not built in stone, but in the transformation of the lives we've touched. 9. Embracing the gift of your own company. Suffering often arises from longing for what was, for what could be, for what we believe we lack. But when we learn to sit with ourselves, to embrace our own presence fully, we unlock a joy that is unshakable. A joy that does not depend on circumstances, but one that emerges from within, steady, quiet, and radiant. Old age is not a time of loss. It is a time of profound gain. It is a return to the self, an opportunity to live fully and authentically, unburdened by expectations. For much of life, we shape ourselves to fit into roles dictated by society, maintaining relationships out of obligation, striving to meet external standards. But in solitude, those masks fall away. What remains is the raw, unfiltered truth of who we are. There is beauty in this process. The silence that once felt daunting becomes a sanctuary. The stillness that once seemed empty transforms into a space of infinite depth. We begin to listen, not to the noise of the world, but to the quiet wisdom that has been within us all along. Some may fear that embracing solitude means turning away from connection, but the opposite is true. When we are at peace within ourselves, we engage with others from a place of authenticity rather than need. Relationships become lighter, freer, and more meaningful, no longer weighed down by expectation or dependency. We appreciate people for who they are, rather than for what they can offer. And in this space of self-sufficiency, something remarkable happens. We give love, not because we lack it, but because we are overflowing with it. And then, a great realization dawns. We were never truly alone. The universe moves through us, breathes with us. The trees, the wind, the sun, everything is alive, connected, intertwined. Solitude, in its purest form, is not isolation. It is a reunion with ourselves, a deep embrace of the life that has always been within us. This is the gift of our own company, not something to endure, but something to cherish. A chance to step into the vastness of our being, to see ourselves with clarity, to stand in stillness and say, I am enough. So as we walk this path of aging, let us not mourn what has passed or cling to what is fleeting. Instead, let us embrace the present, the fullness of our own presence. For in that sacred solitude, we don't lose ourselves. We finally find ourselves. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect, then share your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe for more insights on living with wisdom, purpose, and peace. And in the next video, we'll explore how to cultivate resilience in the face of change. Until then, embrace the quiet. It is where your true self awaits.